Okay, this is a video about making a project finance exercise. Now, what I have done is made a little file. I actually made a video about this file and then it got messed up, but I'm just going to leave it here. Now, what I have done is made a set of inputs, a very simple set of inputs, no letter of credit on a DSRA, no development fees, no allocation of mezzanine interest, no sculpting with multiple issues, no sculpting when we have a fixed debt amount, and on, no VAT interest, nothing, just a simple case. And I use this for people to get ready for my class. Now I've made this for a couple of years, and each year I seem to make a new one. So what we have is we have some inputs, some timing inputs. I put 36 months of a construction period, 30 years, and then I use the E date a little bit for defining the dates. And then the next thing I said is, okay, how many, I put per, this should be pre-COD, periods do we have? And how many months do we have? So we have 1 month per period. So it's a monthly model, and then it turns into a semi-model, blah, 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 semi-annual model after the COD period. And as usual, just to kind of get things going, I put a CapEx then. Now, for the people who might be doing this exercise, would you mind opening the file called generic macros? Okay, and when you open that, press this little initialization button, and then on this one, make sure it's on column B, I guess. And then what we'll do, I'm going to have you make a little graph at the top, so that let's put 4 kind of things right at the top. And then we have 4 rows at the top, and you can see what's an input and what's a calculation. So I put a little normal distribution. I assumed that we had the mean here for the normal. I'll put we put mean and standard deviation. You don't have to do this normally, of course, so I put a little period here, going from 1 to whatever it is, and then we get a normal distribution, and I use that for the S-curve. Now for the Ebitda, I assume the Ebitda is the same as CFADS because I don't know if I emphasized enough, I'm not putting taxes into this model. No taxes. So I put a little period that goes up, and then I made a kind of little assumption about a ramp up period, and then we finish in year 30. I should have put up here, I'll put 100 in the very last year. Okay, and now the reason I set up all this like this is that we can use the lookup function. And I also put some seasonality so the CFADS will bounce up and down a little bit. And at the very top, I'm going to have you put the DSCR. When you get finished, let's put the PLCR, the DSCR, the LLCR, and then let's put a graph of our cash flow and our debt service right here. Okay, so that will be the result. And maybe, I'm sorry, we also maybe should put the project IRR and equity IRR. This, if you're bankers, you might say, I don't care about this, but I really think, especially on the project IRR, it's a very relevant thing to look at. And so I put some financing parameters in, and I emphasize that when you put the financing in, this might be quite complicated later, you put how big the debt size is. And we're going to size the debt with a DSCR. We're going to do it very simply. And then we can put equity up front, 0, which means it's pro rata. Or we can put 100% equity up front, which means it's all equity up front. Or we could put 50-50. And then we'll make a debt tenor, and after we make a debt tenor, we'll go upstairs to the top and make sure we can see maybe for just a minute we'll split it here so we can see what the 22 years since the commercial operation date, and oh, excuse me, then we'll put a swap rate, and I put a little bit of a credit spread. Now when I did this, I said let's take the initial date, and I start this whole model at financial close. By the way, I've made this video for the second time. The last one blew up because I'm too cheap to get enough memory in my computer, it seems. Then I put an upfront fee and a commitment fee, and we put a DSRA. So those are the things we're going to have you fill it in. Now, I don't want you sitting around making a whole lot of titles. So here's what I did. The first thing is we put some timing parameters in here. And I started, and every time now, here is my rule. Don't follow the stupid bureaucratic rules of fast, smart, F1, F9 chorality. Don't follow their idiotic rules. Make sure and put yourself in the user and be creative. Be creative. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have got emotional about that. But following silly best practice, okay, follow your own best practices. I don't care if you call that them, but the big thing is don't make worst practices. Be creative. And don't put the stuff up here and then have to go down here. Just put the stuff at the right-hand side. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to press this Control-Alt-C again. I'm gonna put a little link and put the color in, and please don't waste all your time coloring sheets. Don't think being a good modeler is about being fast in Excel and coloring sheets well. Please, this is not what it's about. It's about something much better, being nice and creative. And so I started with Alt-EIS, and I put 150 in, and then once I had that, I said, okay, we can take the for the first 36 months, we're going to make a little flag for our pre-COD. This is pre. I'm glad I'm doing this. COD flag. And then I've been over this now a bunch of times. Put a little units up here and tell everybody what you use some of the stuff at the left efficiently. I got the right and left yet. Okay. And don't worry about putting a different formula in the very first one. Don't get obsessed like I have been getting upset. Oh no, the auditors are going to get me. Screw it. Do things that make sense. So this is the year, the period right before the start, and then you can add one, and then you can look up and put a little if statement that says if we're in pre-CO period, pre-PCOD period, we're going to have 1 month. Then we're going to go forward. Let's make it a little smaller, and then we're going to go forward, and then we're going to go to the post-COD period, and we're going to switch it to 6 months, and then we're going to put a little thing for the COD date, and this is the decommissioning date. Now, make sure, here is my real rule. This is a rule. To find a thing, you can press Control, square bracket, and then F5. Instead of doing all this other thing for the dependence, Alt-MD and all that stuff. If you can just find these things really fast with that little shortcut, what a nicer way to do things. Okay, now, so we started by putting the total cost of the project. Since it's red, we can see exactly where it comes from. Control, square bracket, F5, go back. Make it easy to find for yourself and for the users. And then when I put the X lookup to mess around with it, that's like the lookup here. Use the lookup on the entire line. Let's go to, okay, let's do this one. Equal lookup. And I said, okay, for the S curve, I put a period. Now it happens to be that I can use this period. I take this period and then click on this entire period that we defined for the S-curve and then just do it that quickly, please. And then you can multiply the total by the S-curve, put in and then I put in an operating period. But that operating year is not the same as the operating period because 12 divided by the number of periods per year, and if you press Control and square bracket, even on that one, it nicely, if you've got a simple formula, it takes you back. And then we use the round function to push it up or down. Okay, and then I put the Ebitda in, and for the Ebitda, I did it first without any seasonality. And again, this is, we put the year, I said, here's the year of the Ebitda right here. This is year, and I went from 1 to 30, and I purposely made it change because we're going to have a little bit of sculpting. And then I said, let's put, whether it's let's put a little flag, and if it's the first period, it's 0, but if it's the second period, it's 1. And then we can use the lookup function again, because I said, let's put some seasonality in here. And for the seasonality, let's use the lookup again, equal lookup. So even something like this, we'll put if it's 0 or 1, so even something like this, you just click on the whole stupid line, and it doesn't take any more space or anything else, and then multiply this by the thing up front. And this is another thing I scream about, but keep the things you're going to use over and over, the flags you're going to use over and over again, right at the top. And the pre-COD or the construction period and the post-COD, that's going to be a big deal. And then you can get, so the final Ebitda is, this could be like a wind project or a solar, it bounces around a little, okay? If you want to see something really fast, watch me screw up, but you can kind of just press F11 quickly, okay? And then we'll get the project cash flow right at the start. Now this should be after tax and depreciation, so I did it very, very simply, but we have a project IRR of 5.51%, and then we put in a debt of about 3.5%, and the debt goes up later on, so maybe let's see what kind of equity IRR we can get out of this. We put the upfront fees and commitment fees in. So that's where to start. Now, the next thing, I go crazy about this too. I just read this survey of how people apply valuation in the DCF. It is remarkable. It is remarkably bad. So here's what I did after that. This is what you get. Now, the rest of it, you fill in. I'm not filling in. I want you to take this Ebitda/CFADS, and I want you to first size the debt. And this could be in a different sheet, blah, blah, blah. But put the debt sizing in before you put the debt later on. A lot of people follow the bureaucratic rules by saying, oh, development cost, construction financing. Finally, after construction financing, we get to operations and Ebitda. And after that, we put debt repayment. There's not even a debt sizing sheet in here. This is a crucial part of the model. And use a flag. The debt repayment flag is crucial. Compute the CFADS, and then get the percent annual interest rates, and then convert the annual rates by this flag up here, this months per period. Just take 12 divided by 12 times the annual rate. Okay, I almost should put that in. Let me see. No, I'm not going to. No, I'm not going to. I was going to put periodic factor, and then we're going to grab the DSCR from here. And once we have the DSCR, we're going to make an index, and this index, we have to be really careful, multiply this by 1 plus the periodic rate, but multiply that by the factor there, okay? And then you can put a flag for the COD, just to put an equal sign and get the COD period. And once you get the COD period, make a flag that just is 1. So sum this all up. use the sums. Use the sums over and over again, like this operating period is a sum of 60 because I put less than instead of less than or equal to. You can eventually make your wonderful audit page. I'm so proud of you for doing that. I do have to make that for my project I'm working on. Now, this funded at COD will be nothing until we're just funding. The repayment will be our total target debt service minus the interest just below, and that interest will be computed using this periodic interest rate. And if everything works, we better, why don't we put a little test here, a test of closing balance. And the thing better come down to 0. Oops, oh no. You know, I've never fixed this. Okay, and then we're going to put then we're going to do something else too. We're going to run into all sorts of circular references, and they're not going to be bad, and we'll use the copy and paste here. I've given up. I haven't completely, of course, given up on my UDF method, but we'll gather that. The only thing we'll have here is we'll sum up all the cash flows. We actually have it here. Where's our capex? I can't believe I didn't sum this here for you. I'm allowed to just make changes in the non-financing part of this. Remember, Control Alt C, and then what it does is it gives you a oof. It puts the sums in a little bit of a different column, and that idiot, that Oliver guy, told me, don't put our things in. Okay, who cares about that, right? Yeah, okay, and then so what we'll do is get our total capex from the sum, but we don't have the IDC and all that, and then we'll get our total uses of funds. My computer just ran out of memory again. Where was I? We'll get the total, once we get the total debt here from our debt sizing. That's why we need to do the debt sizing first, just to get this. And then we'll subtract, of course, the total from the equity. Now, there could be adjustments you have for mezzanine debt, IDC, for development fees that aren't included, for excluding other things that the banks don't allow that are real expenditures, some that aren't real. Okay, and then after that, we're going to do a little bit of an allocation. We'll allocate some of the equity up here. We'll allocate some of the equity, and this euro shouldn't be here. This euro should be here. We'll allocate some of the equity here, and we put up here. Remember, we put that down here. We've got this upfront equity, and why in the heck is it over here? Okay, and then we'll put that percent. So this could be all upfront, all pro rata, either one, and then the equity that's pro rata. That will be, this amount will just be the total equity minus the amount we put up front. The debt we'll assume is all pro rata. Okay, and then we'll get the total debt and equity pro rata. And then once we have the total debt and equity, we can just divide this and get the percent. Okay, and we don't need an amount this time. All right, and then we copy this. If I hadn't messed up that other thing, we copy this. You know what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a little. I have in this Shift Control E. We're going to use this to compute all of the circular references. Okay, and then we'll maybe we'll do this too. Shift Control E. That's just a handmade shortcut. Oops. Okay, Shift Control F gets rid of it. Okay, and then we get this one, and then we can, after we do this, putting all the uses that correspond to our summary sources and uses, which is a big deal. This is the classic construction financing sheet. Okay, and I suppose there are situations. If your debt is computed just from the debt to capital ratio, you really might, you wouldn't necessarily need this page, but you would still need this. I would suggest strongly, you don't need it, but I would suggest it's very, very convenient to have a summary sources and uses page. And then once we have the sources of funds, we can start with the uses of funds. And the uses of funds, we'll start by getting the equity from right here. And we'll just fix that. This will just be a fixed amount all the way across. And then we'll subtract how much we've already spent. So if our equity commitment was 1,000 and we've already put in 500, we've got 500 left. And that 500 left is really important because we'll make an opening balance and closing balance for this upfront equity. And as soon as we hit this remaining balance goes to 0, that's the most we can use. So we'll put the minimum of the remaining balances or the funding needs. So we'll use a little bit of a minimum function, which is about the only complicated thing you will really want to do. The only formula. And then we'll have another subtotal. Okay, I'm going to put a little 1, Shift Control R. That copies it all the way across. Shift Control E. And we'll put our total here. And the reason I'm doing this is like a cascade. We have the total funding needs minus the pro rata. And then we can put our pro rata percentages up here from our little summary sources and uses down here. Okay, I just can't believe all these people have to put it up front and down there. Oh, God, I hate that. Okay, sorry about screaming. I'm promising not to swear in this one. Now we'll put a debt service reserve account, which naturally comes. No, we're not ready. No. Then we'll put our debt balance account, and I would put the flag here again. That debt repayment flag. Repayment flag is a big one. And I'll put repeat. And this is my rule again. Here's the rule. I should show you here. Every formula, either you can press, if you need to find out where something comes from, you can press the control bracket F5. I've already showed you that. The other thing is, if you can't press the F2, and if you can't see where things are coming from the F2 button, you've done a crap job. If your formulas are long, you should be in jail. Not really. Other people should be in jail. Press F2, but I guess the exception is the lookup function. Everything should be easy to see, and it should almost be on the same page. So poor users like me, old users like me, can really see it. I was on the phone today, and somebody was saying they're old because they were alive when Kennedy was shot. I guess they said John Kennedy. I was older. All right, now, so then let's go after we've put our sources and uses and put our pro rata in. We sum up all the debt funding and the equity funding. The debt is all pro rata in this case. The equity is the up here, the amount we funded plus the amount of the equity pro rata. All right, and that lays it out. Now you can get way more complicated. But when you get more complicated, if you follow some kind of structure like this, I swear it'll help you. If you have multiple debt issues, more complicated sculpting, taxes, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so what we do is for the debt service DSRA, we start with this, and then we put this required DSRA, and we could use this sum offset. This is the only time, there's a little bit of a difficult formula. And then what we do is we, again, put our opening balance in, and then we can get our remaining amount we need to fund. Okay, so, oops. Oh, shit. Oh, excuse me, what did I just do? Okay, and so, shit, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, I left the Shift Control F. I left it. I left it on. Sorry about that. So I was going to put an underline on on the DSRA, but all right, I'll do that. Okay, this is how much we have to fund. I see why it didn't work. Okay, it's 100 lines below. Okay, enough. Then we can say, well, how much? Well, let's DSRA funding allocation, and some of it will be pre-COD. So we'll take this line up here. We'll take this line, and then we'll allocate that based on the flag that we can see up here. If it's pre-COD, if we need some funding, we're going to get it from the pre-COD. Otherwise, we'll get it from the post-COD. And then we'll just make a little balance where we put our funding in. And then when we're finished, up here, and I went through this debt balance too quickly. Oh, shoot. But I'm going to leave it. I didn't explain that we'll put our debt draws, excuse me, I skipped around. The debt draws come from the sources and uses. The debt repayment we put in our up here in our debt sizing calculation. That might be adjusted for sweeps and everything else. Okay, and then we excuse me, then we go down and we put our interest in, and our interest cost, we already computed the interest rate, we use the interest cost, and then we make an allocation of the interest cost. Some goes pre-COD, IDC, post-COD, and when you have multiple units and you have to allocate that, I know it's really a pain. And then we'll put a financial close flag, which will just be the first one, and then we'll put an equal sign. We'll go over and get the upfront fee from down in the financing inputs, and we'll do the same thing for the debt commitment. We'll also put the debt commitment over here, and again, the fact that we have our summary sources and uses means we can just find this fee up here really quickly. Okay, and then we'll remember, then we have the unfunded amount, which is only over the pre-COD period, and we have the flag up here, so that's all okay. And we convert this commitment fee, which is expressed as an annual fee, into a periodic fee. I'm just going to use this months per period up here, and we're on. And then once we have all of those, we go up to the sources and uses, and this is where the circular reference indeed arises, because we're grabbing things from the bottom, not the top. So we grab these things from the bottom, we sum them. Once we sum them, we keep going up, and we put them up here, and then we have circular references. Because some of these, not all of these, particularly the commitment fee and the upfront fee, that depends on the debt amount. And if we have more debt, we have more equity. And if we have more equity, then our funding needs changed. And we have problems. And the DSRA will give us the biggest problems of all. But I'm putting these in because it's a very basic, real problem of modeling. Okay, and then after we've done this, we go through the cash flow waterfall. Is that right? And I said leave the taxes blank, the working capital blank, put the CFADS here. Okay, and I'm going to have you put some underlines in, and then compute the remaining debt service, put the DSRA back. I didn't even have you make a balance sheet. If you want extra credit, you can put a balance sheet together, but if you have to put a balance sheet together, you're going to have to compute the depreciation. You might even have to compute the depreciation on the interest during construction, and that'll be a little bit of a pain, and I just want you to really, really focus on what's absolutely crucial. You can compute the equity IRR, the CFADS, the debt DSCR. That will be exactly the same as the input, hopefully. And then you can put the debt repayment flag in, get the PV of the debt service using that PV factor. So we get the PV. It's like a DSCR expressed in terms of PV, and then we'll put the computed LLCR and the computed PLCR. And the PLCR is kind of easier because you don't have to do it over the debt repayment period. You do it over the whole payment period, but you always use the debt rate. And then we can get the average life, and we can make a little counter for the debt period. So that you know, what I maybe should have done is kind of move these over like this, so we can see that this is what we're trying to compute. This is what we need to get them. Okay, and all right. And I guess I'll whatever. Okay, and what we do here is once we have the once we have this debt repayment flag, we do use a little counter. We multiply the repayment, which, you know, maybe we'll put the debt repayment here. Okay, and this will be just a number maybe, and this will be a euro, and this will be a euro, and this will be a euro, and then we'll get the average debt life, and we'll express it in years. We'll have to divide it by 2 to get it to be years, and then let's have you make a graph. And to make a graph on the X scale, we want to make a graph of the CFADS and the debt service, but we only want to make it the graph over the operating period. And then I'm going to explain how to do that with our NA trick, but you can try it. So that's our assignment. That's the assignment. All right. And I'm going to put this assignment, I'm going to kind of write this assignment up a little bit in the on my web page, and I'll put the file. This is going to be the assignment.